Hi, everybody. It's 2:31. Was Lisa going to join us? I don't know if Lisa was going to join or not. Not on personal services, probably not. Hi, everybody. I wanted to say welcome to our call with the Chamber and Routt County on answering questions about personal services. So my name is Robin Shepper. I am the Joint Information Center Manager. So my job is to get information out to the community on what's happening during this COVID-19 crisis. And I'm joined by, I'll let you introduce yourselves. Scott, you want to start today?
You're muted, Scott.
You're muted, Scott.
Sorry about that. I'm Scott Kelman. I'm the Director of Environmental Health for Routt County.
And I'm Kara Stoller, the CEO of the Steamboat Springs Chamber. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, so I wanted to apologize to everyone in advance. I see more people are joining. So I'll talk slowly so more people can join. But we had a technical glitch today. So we sent out on Facebook the coordinates for our Zoom meeting to listen to it on audio. We'll be putting this recording on our Facebook and trying to get to the questions. So I have a whole list of questions. I got a lot of questions for this one. Again, really, so I'll just give an overview of what's happening just in case not everybody knows what's going on. Just review. So we, in the state of Colorado, Governor Polis ordered a kind of what was called a stay-at-home order, public health order. That was at the beginning of March, and that really shut down a lot of business, and the state decided as a way to stop community spread and make sure that our hospitals could deal with any type of surge of hospitalizations, and that we could keep our communities safe, decrease the disease prevalence, and also make sure we have less hospitalizations and deaths. He took extreme measures. So one was that first thing was a stay-at-home order that didn't allow things like personal services, retailers to operate in the last month. So now the safer at home public health order from the state is allowing different businesses to open up, but with mitigation protocols, and that would be just ways of conducting business in a way that can keep everybody safe. So that's happened at the state level, and then at the Routt County level, when the governor put together the stay-at-home order, and there were critical businesses still operating, grocery stores and some construction, we put together what was called it was Public Health Order number 3, but it was mainly site mitigation standards. So it was ways to keep employees safe and also customers safe. And the big difference between the site mitigation protocol for Routt County versus the state is that Routt County required customers to wear facial masks, and the reason for that was transmission. We found that when we were just urging people to wear face coverings, people were not doing it, but when we required it, that people would do that. So that was the Routt County public health order that just got amended on Monday to include all businesses that are gonna open. So today, we're gonna use our experts today to try to answer these questions and really try to dive a little deeply into some of the things that are kind of come up for businesses as they open up their practices. So the first thing that I wanted to ask Scott, who's from our Department of Public Health and Environment. Really, when we use these terms, site mitigation protocol and all that kind of stuff, what does that mean? And why do we do that?
And so the protocols are in place to reduce the chances of transmission of the virus. And, you know, in a nutshell, it's about gathering, distancing, cleaning, screening, and wearing of masks. And so those are the 5 key points. And then you can drill down and, you know, talk about specifics of each of those 5 points. And so what the mitigation plan does is it summarizes how those 5 points are going to be covered in the operation of your business.
Okay, that sounds great. So, Kara, I would ask, so kind of how difficult do you think it is for businesses to put these protocols in place? Kind of what have you been hearing from businesses?
So, you know, there's a few industries that I would say already put into place a lot of disinfecting and cleaning. And I would say that personal services is often an industry that does that. So, you know, it's growing upon that, it's adding to it. There's more specifics that are required, and it is a step above. But I think the great thing for personal services specifically is that a lot of those practices are already in place. And I think it'll be really important for us today to go through some of those key elements that are out of the ordinary for personal services.
So, so I'm looking at some of questions that I have. So we talked about face coverings, and so one question is, what criteria must be met for a client to be able to remove a face mask? Can they remove it if the trainer is wearing a mask and they are the only client? Scott, you want to take that?
Wow, that's a good question to start off with. And you know, I guess I would just start with saying that, you know, the state and the county, but primarily the state, you know, set up these orders. And, you know, just like any regulation, it's hard for regulations to cover every single detail. You know, you have one overarching regulation for all of these different processes. And so, you know, you do have to use some common sense and be cognizant about what you're doing and how you're doing it. And, you know, I guess I don't have a great answer. We know that, you know, the Routt County orders specifically say that both a customer and a person in a business has to have a mask. And there's good reason for that. It's because if both people have masks, then you're not putting those droplets into the air that come from respiration. And from a personal trainer standpoint, you know, I also understand that if you have a mask and you're working out, that it could be kind of hard to breathe. And, you know, some of these questions that we're getting are hard to answer, and I'm pointing people to and also referencing Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment website for COVID-19. And I'll just give you the address. It's covid19.colorado.gov. And then there's links for Safer at Home and then Safer at Home personal services. And so I'm not sure how to answer that question because, you know, that's a tough one. How do you work out with the mask on? And so I would reference that site and try to drill down and find that. You know, ideally, you'd be able to keep that mask on if possible.
Yeah, I think, you know, from my understanding from the state public health order and the Routt County public health order is that you want to have both a trainer or whoever is doing, you know, personal services and the client to putting keeping the face masks on. Mainly is just we're trying to reduce transmission. And so I'm thinking about that my sons are dying for a haircut. And so I was demonstrating last night. I said, well, if you have a mask like this, we have masks that we got from grandma that, you know, that the hairdresser can still cut your hair around the face mask. It's a little harder to do if you're wearing a ski buff. but something to do, you know, and I think the intent of both the Routt County Public Health Order and the state public health order is really helping businesses open. But the only way we're going to get them open is that we keep these prevention strategies in place. Because if we open up and then all of a sudden people are not wearing face coverings and not washing their hands and not wiping down counters and not doing all the things that are necessary to keep the site safe, then we may spike in cases, and then we may go back to stay at home where we were before. And I don't think at the state level or county level we want to go backwards. We want to progress to get as normal as possible. So, Kara, let me ask you from the chamber's perspective, what are some of the things that what are some of the questions that you're hearing from personal services, and how has the chamber been helping different businesses go through this transition to safer at home?
I think the biggest thing is the specifics. It's we've already mentioned, you know, what square footage equates to how many people can I have, and just really drilling down. And I think it's, as Scott has already mentioned, it's really important to focus on, you know, the risk mitigation and how can you implement as much as possible of this? How can you, if it doesn't feel right, then it's probably not right. You know, taking all efforts in order to keep our own germs to ourselves is the key point, and that there's not going to be a specific answer to every single question, or, because everything is so different. And I think it's, as mentioned with the county's messaging, putting, you know, some onus on the business owners to make sure that they're doing the best that they can. And,
right.
You know, certainly the onus is also on the customers, which should hopefully help the business owners and employees feel more safe because of the county orders that are in place in regards to the masks. But just, you know, if there's a mitigation protocol in place, review it, try to make sure you can do everything that works. If there's something that you think would work better for your business, let's see what that looks like. And we're all here to answer questions that are more specific, but I think that's a challenge, is like, how do I make these specific guidelines work for me? But just to communicate that it's not all going to be perfect and fit into a nice, neat little pile of the protocols.
And,
right.
and just to clarify, you know, the guidance does, or the CDPHE guidance does specifically say only perform services that can be done without a customer removing their mask. So I know that's tough in some situations, but that's what we're trying to achieve. And the quicker, you know, we can continue to, or, you know, the better that we can comply with the guidance and regulations, the quicker that things will loosen up and those restrictions will be loosened and things will get a little bit easier to operate.
Right. So Scott, one of the questions that we got for this, and also for our other sessions that we've done, is we have a site mitigation protocol for the county that's actually available on our website, which is covid19routtcounty.com. Do personal services business have to submit their site mitigation plans to the county?
So that's a great question. For retail food establishments, you know, and they remained open, so we were working on this right from the beginning. We did have them not only fill out and post the mitigation plans, but also to take a picture of those plans and send them to us. And so we logged all that information. We really don't have the resources to go through the same process with all the businesses. And so what we decided to do is to have businesses complete the plans, post in a visible location for both employees and customers, and then make them available upon request. And we will be checking in and asking for those plans from certain businesses. We haven't really developed a specific process, but that's how we're going to, oversee this process.
Right, that makes sense. And so, Kara, we talked about something as a way to help both customers and employers or sites that have personal services. Let customers know what they have done, and also, let customers know what they need to do, what responsibilities. So could you explain kind of some of the efforts that the chamber's taking in order to do that?
In partnership with Main Street, we are working on just one of the requirements in the mitigation protocols to state before somebody comes in what you've done as a business owner to take the recommended or the required protocols. So we are working on a poster that has, this is what we request of you. You have to do, we ask you to not come in if you're sick. Make sure that you've washed your hands fairly recently, if not, use disinfectant that we have inside. Wear a face mask. And then underneath that have kind of a checklist of the really high level mitigation protocol items that need to be put into place so that you as a business owner can say, look, these are the things that we've done and this is what we expect of you before coming in, because it is 100% a two-way street. I know that business owners are, as they should be, concerned about themselves, and how do you say, please put your mask on in a kind way, because that's not the norm for our society. So we're working with the county to push that face mask message, that is the norm right now for everybody to wear them, and that it is required for people when they go into a business to wear the face mask. So just working on a consistent way to message that so that people see the same signage in different places and they, yep, I know, I need to do my part to stop the spread or to slow the spread.
So Scott, I want to put you on your toes. So there's a question we got that I did not expect that I should have. For a lot of personal services, whether it's nails, personal training, massage therapy, people go into their homes. So they're not going to have a posted sign like Kara was describing outside of their business, because they don't have a bricks and mortar business, but they actually go into people's homes. So I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but just from your kind of experience of having done, worked with different businesses on this, what advice would you give to people that provide those services in people's homes?
So yeah, I guess I'm going to be shooting from the hip because we haven't really addressed this, but I would say that every business owner should have completed that mitigation plan, and they should have that plan with them and show the customer, this is the mitigation plan. This is how we're going to make things work to avoid transmission of the virus. And, and as a customer, we should make sure, whether we're having somebody come to our homes or whether we're going to a restaurant or going to some other type of retail store, that we're looking for that plan and making sure that the business is operating as they said they would under the mitigation plan. So I think that's my best answer and if you're going to visit somebody's house, you should have that with you and say, hey, here's my mitigation plan, and have that discussion. This is how we're going to make this work and reduce the risk of transmission.
Yeah, and so we've gotten some. So we're learning everything here as we go along, because this is new. So I know a lot of industries in Steamboat are also regulated by the Department of Regulatory Affairs, so that they have certain regulations that they have to follow. And I'm sure that they've provided, I'm hoping that they've also provided some great information for people that have different businesses that are under the regulation of DORA. The thing I would say for Routt County, again, as Kara mentioned is Routt County is really encouraging not just employees to wear face coverings, but customers. So we got a question of, do we need to take clients' temperature? And again, I'm no expert, but I'm just thinking about my case. So I live with my husband and I have 2 teenage sons. And because we've been together for, forever, we don't wear masks around the house because we're with each other all the time. But when we leave the house, we wear masks. So if we introduce somebody into our house, what I would do is that I would make sure everybody in our house was wearing a mask, because I wouldn't want to put the person that's coming into my house at risk. And perhaps to add, I don't know what you think, Scott and Kara, is just like we have that, I don't know if it's a requirement, but just like we have that employee self-screening checklist that we've talked about, that employees take their temperature before they go to work, and that employees keep a record of that, that they don't have a temperature, that they don't have any other symptoms, that perhaps when you're booking an appointment to go to somebody's house, you ask some of those questions, like, have you checked your temperature, or anybody in your house? That may be a smart thing to do. I don't think we haven't gotten to that big detail in the Routt County mitigation protocol, but I would assume that would be a smart thing to do, because I think the main thing is we're trying to stop the community spread. I don't know what you guys think about that.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And, both the customer and the business owner should be going through that checklist about, are we going to be up against potentially exceeding the gathering limit of 10 people, and how are we going to be able to keep distancing, and what kind of cleaning has gone on, and the screening like Robin talked about, and also making sure those masks are being worn. So everyone should be going through that checklist and thinking about what the risk is, and if you're willing to accept that risk to get that service.
Yeah, so Scott, I'm going to put you on the spot. Another question that we got. So one, I think I can answer the first part of the question. So if I remember correctly from the Safer at Home guidelines, that gyms are not allowed to open yet, correct? Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, so if I'm a personal trainer and I have a space, like let's say 2,000 square feet, for example, and we're a collaboration of multiple, personal trainers, can I have different personal trainers working at the same time, or can it be just one-on-one, or do I space them out, or how do I make my business work that if I have a big enough space that they can work? What would be your recommendations?
So my understanding is that, and I would want to confirm that it doesn't have to be one-on-one, that as long as you can maintain the distancing and stay under that gathering limit of 10 people or less, that you should be okay. And would you agree with that, Kara?
The state, the PDF that they've shared for personal services states that personal training services for fewer than 4 people.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but on the other part of it, I think, and I would just add that, it's back to the goal of spacing each other out as much as possible. Maybe it's one day that a certain group needs to, especially on a day like today, be outside and be more than 6 feet apart as much as possible. I know there's certain equipment that needs to be used, but just really trying your best to keep people apart and not spread the germs, keeping that in the forefront and using best judgment.
And I think you could argue, if you're breathing hard, respiring more, that, it probably isn't a bad idea to try to space yourself out even more. But I hadn't seen that limit of 4 people, so I appreciate that.
Yeah. And so either one of you, I don't know if you have the list of just you know, we probably have different types of people listening, but even if we, if the general public listens and they don't know which personal services come under this safer at home order, you know, either one of you, do you have the list in front of you of which personal services can start working?
I can run through a couple of them. The professional beauty services, hair salons, barbershops, nail salons, esthetician services, cosmetologist services, body art professionals, hair, tattoo, personal training services, again, for fewer than 4 people. So I think the 4th person would be the trainer. Pastoral services, so if you need to see the leader at your church and want to have that one-on-one counseling, then you can do that. But it should be reiterated that full church gatherings are not yet allowed. The pet groomers and pet grooming facilities, pet handlers and trainers, pet trainers, dry cleaners, tailors, and sun tanning services are a shorter list that I'm referencing right now. But if Scott, you have more to.
No, that's the exact list that I was looking at from the CDPHE website.
So we may not know the answer to this, and maybe Dora's answered this, but I'm looking at the list of esthetician skincare. So if I have a mask on, I'm not sure, you know, how you do something. So maybe there's some contraption that, you know, covers my mouth and nose. Have you guys heard anything about that for facials or anything like that?
You know, I haven't heard anything specific, but it is clear that it says only perform services that can be done without a customer removing their mask. And so, you know, there may be a way to, you know, reduce that area going over your nose and mouth. But it gets tougher when, you know, you're talking about specifically something on your face.
Right, exactly, right. Excuse me. So, so some of the other things is kind of harder to say. So I was thinking about, we talked about getting back to normal. So Kara, can you just talk about kind of, nobody knows what's going to happen in the future, but kind of what expectations should be? You know, do you think we'll be wearing face masks for a long time?
I definitely, for the foreseeable future, I think it will be part of it. I could possibly see, you know, when you absolutely can't, if you are getting a facial, then you would take it off. But in this next phase, and I would gather probably throughout the summer, that we would be still wearing masks fairly often. My hope is that things could change sooner, but I think we need to get comfortable with that. I was just shared with my our preschool that we need to start getting our little one used to wearing one. So I think it's some time.
Yeah, exactly. Scott, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, just, you know, just that the better we are at, you know, following these rules and reducing risk, the quicker that we can start to emerge from the restrictions. And so that's why it's so important that people, you know, take personal responsibility and, you know, really comply with the guidance and the orders, so we can loosen those restrictions, you know, just as quickly as we possibly can.
Mm-hmm. And the, you know, washing hands too, that's a big piece of it. It's not, you know, the mask is huge, but so is washing hands. So
Right. And so we had a session earlier for retailers, and we were talking, we had a lot of questions about employee check-in of like, how do we check the health and wellness of employees? Kara, do you want to just kind of talk about some of the things that through the public health orders that employers have to do with the employees, and some creative ways you can do that if you don't have a thermometer on site and things like that?
mm-hmm. And again, it's, you know, we have heard that now we don't have a front thermometer and we can't find one, and how do we share one and all of that. I think a lot of in most instances you could have, and Scott, definitely correct me if I'm wrong, but you could have your employees do self-checks at home before they come in. I know when you start getting into the larger sized employers with over 25 people, 25 employees coming to work, that there are much, those temperature checks are happening as people are walking in the door. But it's my understanding that with fewer than 25 fewer than 25 employees, the employees can do self-checks at home and document that on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's my understanding. And, we still want everyone to have thermometers, and everyone should be trying to get a thermometer. And so, showing, goodwill towards trying to comply is the next best thing. And so, a lot of these items have been scarce, but it fluctuates. And I'd heard that some thermometers were available locally at Walgreens, but I expect those would quickly sell out. So we don't want to throw in the towel on that one. We in some cases just have to do our best, and we have to document that. But that doesn't mean that those efforts shouldn't continue to try to get the equipment that you need.
And hand sanitizer was the other one. Just
oh, right. Why don't you tell the story that we heard in the last session about hand sanitizer?
The bottles and pumps are very, very hard to come by for like the hand sanitizer pumps. However, Steve Green and Steamboat Whiskey do have the actual sanitizer. So if you have, an old soap bottle that you can clean out or something of the like, or an old empty hand sanitizer bottle, you can get it refilled from one of those two companies. So just thinking there's other ways to get a hold of hand sanitizer other than the traditional grocery stores and such.
And Scott, we at the county, we have a temperature check. We're talking about those thermometers, right, that you just put on your head that kind of registers you, because obviously an oral thermometer going into lots of different people would kind of defeat the purpose, right?
Yeah, ideally you would want to use one of the thermal ones. There's a way to clean those other thermometers, but that's another layer of complication. And so, yeah, ideally we would want to use the ones that you rub on your forehead. And so
right.
True.
Yes, exactly. So I wanted to add something that we're trying to do at the county and hoping that everybody else would help participate. So we know that businesses are going to do everything that they can to keep their businesses as safe as possible and implement these site mitigation plans. But we also really want to try to make it more kind of, promote the message of personal responsibility. So we have something called the 5 commitments of containment. You can't really see it very well, but it's here. We'll be sending this out, but I'll just read to you things that we're hoping that people will take personal responsibility for. Is that one is that customers and others, just as we go about our lives, is that we maintain that 6 feet of physical distance, and that 2, we'll wash our hands often, that will cover our faces in public. If we are sick or at risk, that we'll stay home. And then if we have any symptoms, that we'll get tested. And so that's really, as Kara said before, it's kind of a two-way street. So we need the clients, customers to do their part, and then obviously the people providing the services to do their part. And if we both do this together in partnership, then we have a much better chance of opening up the economy and containing the community spread. And then the better that we do at that, then we can open up more and more of the economy. I think Kara would agree that we want to get to the point in Rock County that we can again invite tourists and other people that like to enjoy our mountain community, but we're not quite there yet. So we have to do our part to make our community safe.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
am I missing any questions that that you guys have heard from other people that we didn't that we didn't cover?
Just, I know this is getting a little bit more specific, but you know, if you are a personal trainer and you have, or you are in fact allowed to be in your gym, but gyms just can't be open to the complete public. That's my understanding. But if there's anything else that needs to be outlined on that front, like I need to access the gym to personal train, it seems a little, but gyms are closed.
Right. Yeah, I think that's going to be, yeah, I don't know the answer to that one. I'm thinking about, you know, if there's personal trainers at like Old Town Hot Springs or some of the gyms are not open. So I don't know if they can do that. Maybe that's a conversation they have to have with the owner, because I think it's more about, you know, not having a large amount of people in those type of facilities.
Right.
Scott, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, and you know, we talked about this a little bit earlier, you know, about, you know, ideally you're making payments online. And, you know, I know a lot of trainers in particular with yoga that they've been able to continue and do virtual sessions. So that might be one way around that, not ideal. So I guess I would just try to keep that in mind too. But as far as, you know, being a personal trainer and then using that public space, that's a tough one. I would think that possibly, you know, we could figure out a way if, you know, if they're just limiting to those customers, but I don't
Yeah, probably
have
in
a
a
good answer for that at this point.
right, and probably a specific space, because you have to make sure then after every client that, you know, if they're
All
going
shut
to use,
down.
right, if they're using one of the machines or weights or anything like that, that it's all thoroughly cleaned. Yeah. So, so I just wanted to ask each of you if there's something that you wanted to add before we close this out.
I'll jump in. Thank you, Robin. So a couple of things. We, on the steamboatchamber.com website, we have the PDFs of the state's guidelines. I think that they're for each industry sector. So there's a personal services one that for me gives a lot of detail into what needs to happen in this next phase of reopening. So check that out. We also are, similarly to our restaurant list, we're working to compile a list of businesses that are opening and available. So whether or not you're a chamber member or not, please reach out to our team. You can send an email to myself, Kara, K-A-R-A, at steamboatchamber.com, and I'll get you connected with our member who's working on that. And then just lastly, making sure, if you haven't already, to apply for the PPP loan. It was reopened, replenished at the beginning of this week, and I know that it will go quickly. So talk to your banks ASAP if you haven't done that already, including you know, individual sole proprietors. Contact your local bank ASAP.
Great. Scott, do you have anything else to add?
You know, I do see a question on the chat about rules for dentistry.
Yeah.
And I've thought about this before because, you know, obviously both the patient and the dentist or the hygienist, you know, can't wear a mask and work on teeth. And so I think that I would default to state rules on that one. And, you know, like I said, it's hard to create regulations and orders that cover every detail. And I think this is a good example of that. So I would default to the state rules for that practice.
Right, right. Yeah, I think we have a little clause in our Routt County Public Health Order that talks about not necessarily dentistry, but does some just realizes that there's some businesses that you're gonna have to remove the mask. So, but that's very good advice. So, well, if you guys don't have any more comments, I will close out with a couple of comments for our viewers is that one is that we really try very hard on our website, covid19rockcounty.com, to put as much information as possible so you have it in one place. We put all the public health orders from the state and the county there. We have a frequently asked questions that we've tried to answer all the questions that we can think of, and we post there's a great frequently asked questions about the different sectors that from the state. We just kind of posted the state FAQs on our website. And then we also, we have information about just kind of what's happening in the county, how many people have tested positive, how many hospitalizations and deaths and all that kind of stuff. So if people want to know that, we have some great graphs that people can plug into. And the thing that Kara had mentioned, and Scott as well, is that as much as we want to go back to our regular normal lives like we were, I mean, just imagine what we were doing 1 year ago. This is kind of our new normal. And so things like washing our hands often, wearing face coverings, to me is a really small price to pay in order to do business. So for me, if I can wear a face covering and still go to my favorite stylist to get my haircut, then I pay that price instead of not being able to do, for her to be doing business at all. So that would be, and me having to cut my own hair, that would be a disaster. So I think that's something that we all have to realize, that things like face covering, having some physical distancing, washing our hands often is something that we're going to have to do with a personal responsibility to get our economy back on track. And really, we're really not going to be secure until we have a vaccine and treatment. And as far as we know, that's gonna take a while. Hopefully it will happen this year, but we don't know exactly when. So I wanted to thank you for your time, Scott and Kara, and remind people that are tuning in that we have a call line at 970-871-8444. If we don't know the answers, we will try to research them for you. And then also just look at some of your state resources, whether it's the Department of Regulatory Agencies or Regulatory Affairs, or Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. There's a lot of state resources that could direct you. So thank you so much, and have a great rest of the afternoon.
Thank you.
All right, bye.